Hey everybody, and welcome back to the board meeting. Today we're doing another reviews and ratings episode where I review and rate all the different games I've been playing in the past 2 weeks with friends, family, and even solo. This week I'm talking about 6 games that I haven't talked about on this channel previously, and I'm just going to give a quick overview of each game, review it, give my personal thoughts, and give it a final rating, and hopefully we're going to do that pretty quickly. So let's just jump into the 6 games and we'll get moving here. And the first game is a solo filler type game that I just recently acquired from Kickstarter. Actually, the game is Resist. Now, like I said, it's a small solo filler card game. In this game, you are going to get a deck of these soldiers that you have, and the soldiers have 2 different sides. There's a hidden side and a revealed side, and you are going to play these cards out whichever way you want to. You can use their hidden ability or their revealed ability, and you're going to send them on these different missions that are out on the board. And these missions have different soldiers on them that you have to take out, and if you don't take them out and go on the mission, they're going to do bad things if you haven't taken them out before the mission. So the game is you're playing these cards out and your soldiers, and you play them whichever way you want to. The hidden side is a less good ability, but that card is going to go back into your deck after that mission is done. If you use the revealed side, there's really powerful abilities on them. They'll do great things for you, but they're out of your deck, and this is sort of a deck building game, sort of, because you're not going to get a lot more cards, and you're not going to you're just not going to add a bunch of new cards, but there is potential of adding some new ones to your deck. You also have these spies in your deck that you really want to get rid of, because they're just basically a useless card, and when you draw them, it just takes up one of the spaces of the cards that you have to play that turn. So it just takes up that turn. So you have some interesting decisions on this, and if you complete missions, that's going to do different things and do different, maybe good things, bad things, depending on the mission. Each mission is completely different, but each mission also has a victory points on it, and if you complete that mission, it goes into your victory pile basically, and if you ever get to 15 points, you can then resign from the game, and you considered winning. But you can also push it and try to get more victory points and get a more prestigious win. But it's pretty hard just to get to 15 points. So the few times that I played this game, once I got to 15, I'm like, I don't think I'm going to be able to win the next mission. So I resigned and got my victory how I did. This is a hard game to win, I'll say that. And it's got interesting decisions. It's going to get a 6.5 from myself. It reminds me of a few different solo games that I have. It reminds me of Friday, and it reminds me of The Lost Expedition. And as far as me liking it, it fits right in between those two. And I think I like it better than Friday, but I don't like it as much as The Lost Expedition. It's just like an average game. After I played it a few times, I was like, okay, that's neat, and I put it away. And I'll probably break it out in a few months again, but it wasn't one that I was like, okay, I want to play it, I want to play it, I want to play it. So yeah, a decent game, 6.5 rating, but nothing amazing. And I will say there's no bad games on this list for this week. I had a good week of gaming. Let's just go to the next one, and we're going to go from my least favorites to my favorites for this. The second game for this week is Dead Men Tell No Tales. This is a cooperative dungeon crawling game, and this reminds me of a couple different games. This reminds me of Flashpoint Fire Rescue and Pandemic. Now, the theme of this game is you are a pirate going onto another ship, and the ship is on fire, but you're trying to take treasure, loot treasure from that ship, and get off the boat in time. But there is going to be a fire in every single one of these rooms that you're revealing, and the fire is represented by these dice. And at the end of each turn, you're going to up those fire dice, and if ever they get to 6, it kind of explodes and causes other rooms to up their fire rating as well. This game, you're going to take actions on your turn. It's one of those action point games where you get 5 actions each turn, and you're going to be moving around this boat trying to deal with the fire, but you're also going to have to fight off other pirates, and you're going to fight off these bigger pirates that are carrying treasure as well. You're trying to defeat those pirates, get that treasure and make your way off the boat, and then you'll have to come back on the boat and find more treasure even. The thing I like about this game is the player powers in this. You get your regular player powers like you do in most cooperative games. Nothing special about that. But what I really like is you get these item cards, which gives you another second ability, actually. And throughout the game, you can actually swap these item cards that will get you different abilities with ones that aren't used in the game. So I really like that. So you got to manage your time. You have to manage these fires that are going on. You have to manage these things that are coming out on the board. You have to deal with them. I like this game. It's going to get a 7 rating. And like the other one, I compared it to 2 other games, and this one I compared it as well. This one sits in between Flashpoint Fire Rescue and Pandemic. I love Pandemic. I'm not a huge fan of Flashpoint Fire Rescue. This one sits in between those two for me. A decent little game that I really like the theme of it with that pirate. Let's go to our third game of this week. This is Caper Europe. This is a small 2-player card game. It's a tug-of-war style game where one player sits on one side of the board, you sit on the other side of the board. You are going to be drafting cards. And there's a couple different things that you're going to be drafting in this game. You're going to alternate rounds between drafting thieves and drafting gear cards. You're going to draft these thieves and put them onto, there's 3 different locations on the board. You're going to put those thieves on your side of the board. And those thieves are going to do different things, but your main objective most of the time is going to be pulling these little caper markers to your side of those locations, trying to win those locations. If the caper marker is on your side after all the rounds have been played, you win that location, you get the right to score those points. A lot of locations will get you extra points for different things, different types of cards you're playing, and different effects on those specific locations. There are also gear cards that you're going to be drafting alternatively like every other round, and those gear cards go on top of those thieves cards. I really like this 2-player game, this 2-player drafting system, because you get a hand of cards and you pick one of them, and then you have to hand those cards to the other player and they pick one. So you're going to have to choose, like, oh, this card works really good for me on this specific thief in this specific location, but there's this other card that works really good for your opponent on their side. And so it's this interesting tug-of-war style game. It's really simple. It's a pretty light game. This is going to get a 7.5 from me, but it does have potential of going up. This gives me that feeling of like a classic 2-player game. This gives me that feel of games like Lost Cities, where you have interesting choices, of games like Seven Wonders Duel. I think it lives close to those. I don't like them as much, but I think this has potential to grow on me. I mean, I played it 6 times so far already. I think it's going to stay in my collection for a long time, and I think it's going to be one that I'm going to break out pretty regularly, especially with people who like lighter games. So 7.5, great rating for that one. Let's go to the next game. The next game is the Artemis Project. The Artemis Project is a dice worker placement game, and I feel like I say this every single week, but I like dice worker placement games, and this is not really an exception. In this game, you're going to be rolling your dice, placing them out like you normally would on different places. You're going to be gathering up resources, trying to get different workers and get different types of bases. I think they're called bases, I'm not really sure, but they're like base cards, and they go into your, if you win them, they go into your side, your section, and you're trying to fill up those bases with different people. Those will activate special abilities for you, but will also get you points at the end of the game. What is really, really interesting in this one is there's a couple different resource spots that you go to, like your normal games, but the numbered dice that you place in those resource spots, that will let you take however many resources of that type that the dice shows. What's interesting is those spots have limited resources, and the less dice, the smaller dice, will actually get to activate first. So they're going to take those resources first before you, and by the time your dice activates, which might be a higher number of dice, there might be no resources left for you to gather. Even though it was a better dice to place, the lower dice usually are kind of better. You want to be able to get the most resources. You want to be able to take the resources before everybody else. So I thought that was a really interesting mechanic in this game, and it's going to get a 7.5 rating from me. I like this game quite a bit. the main reason is those resource spots. I thought that was really cool, really interesting, made for some really tough choices in this game. So 7.5, really liked it. Let's go on to the 5th game this week. This is a small card game. This is a remake. This is Marvel Remix, which is a retheme of the game Fantasy Realms. Fantasy Realms is a small card game that I really enjoyed. This one is just a retheme with a Marvel theme on it. Now, in this game, you're going to start with 7 cards, and all these cards are synergistic with other cards. There's going to be like a base power on that card. That's going to be how many points that card is worth at the end of the game, trying to get the most points. But there's also going to be, most of the time, a special ability on that card. Like you're going to get +2 points for every one of this symbol that you have in your hand of cards at the end of the game. And so on your turn, you are going to be drawing one card from either the deck or the discard pile. Now, if you choose from the deck, that's going to advance the game, because after you draw a card, then you're going to discard a card. And once there is 10 cards in the discard pile, the game is over. But you have interesting choices. A lot of times you have a good hand of cards and you draw one and you're like, all of these are working really good. Which one do I have to get? Which one should I get rid of? And you get rid of that one, and maybe someone else is like, oh, that card works perfectly for me, and they take that one. This is a really good game at 3 to 4 players. I wouldn't recommend it at 5 to 6 because you're not going to get enough turns to really alter your hand very much. So it's more like you draw a deck of cards and then count your points from it. There's not many choices. So in a, like, say 2 to 4 player game, that's where this game really shines for me. If you want to know what the difference is between Fantasy Realms and this one actually has 2 decks of cards. In the original, there's only one. There's your regular deck of cards that has heroes and allies and items and different things like that. In the other deck, there are villain cards. At the end of the game, you have to have at least 1 villain and at least 1 hero or ally, or else you score 0 points. The villains are interesting because they're worth a lot of points a lot of times, but they'll have some kind of negative effect on them. So you want to try to cancel them out, basically. Also, you're going to score quite a few less points in this one, which I enjoy. In Fantasy Realms, you are scoring a lot of points. If you don't score close to 200 points, you're probably not going to win. In this one, if you score 100 points, you are probably going to win. I mean, 100 points is a great score in this one. So I like that the scoring isn't so ridiculous in this one. And I like it better than Fantasy Realms because the Fantasy Realms is very generic fantasy theme, where this one's got the Marvel theme on it. I like Marvel, and you get certain cards and you can relate to it. You know it. You're like, oh, there's Thor. If I get Mjolnir, it's worth more points, so it makes sense to me. The other one is just your generic fantasy, which is kind of boring to me with that generic fantasy. It's going to get an 8 rating, same as Fantasy Realms, but I like it a little bit more. If I'm going to choose Fantasy Realms, I'm going to play this one instead of regular Fantasy Realms. Let's go on to our very last game of this week, the last one, the 6th game. This is a big, giant, epic game. This is Eclipse, Second Dawn for the Galaxy, which is like the 2nd edition of Eclipse. I've never played the regular Eclipse, so I can't speak on that. I can only speak on this one. This is a giant 4X space exploration game, and a lot of times it is spoken of like it's the smaller version of Twilight Imperium, the faster version. And you can play this game in about 2 to 3 hours, I'd say. I can't speak on Twilight Imperium because I've never played it. I don't know if I'll ever get a chance to play it. It's a big, giant game. But what I can say is this reminds me of Scythe, actually, a lot. But this one is a lot more combat-oriented, where Scythe is more like Euro resource management oriented. This one has combat, and there's basically no way to avoid it. In this game, you're going to be exploring out into the galaxy, getting different spots, and you have a bunch of ships at the beginning of the game, your regular standard ships, and you're going to be trying to upgrade those ships to become better. You're trying to basically engine build everything for your player to make it better, make it more efficient. And on your turn, when you take an action, you remove one of these pips from down below on yours. And the more actions you take throughout that round, the more resources you're going to have to spend to pay at the end of the round. So you can take as many actions as you want, basically. But at the end of the round, you're going to have to pay for it. And if you don't have the resources to pay for it, you are going to be hurting. This is a very big mashup of Euro mechanisms meets Amerithrash games. Because you're building up these ships, engine building them basically, pun intended, I suppose there. But then when you meet other ships, you're going to be going into combat, and those combat is going to be dice oriented. You're going to roll dice depending on your ship, what you've upgraded. You can upgrade to have better lasers, better cannons, stuff like that, and that is one of the downfalls of this game. I really, really like this game. It's going to get an 8.5, but it had potential to me to probably be a 10. The only thing I don't like is how combat oriented it is, and that the combat is dice rather than like the scythe system. So you in this game, that combat, it is luck based. You can upgrade your ships to have better chances of winning, but you can just roll really bad and lose to these smaller tiny ships when you've upgraded your ships to the max almost. So, and that's one thing that I don't like about this game, is that combat system. But if you like dice rolling and everything, and especially combat, this is a game I really, really recommend you trying out to see if you like it. And it's not too slow of a game, but it's definitely going to take a few hours to play this. It's just a big giant 4X game that, yeah, just try it out. You might love that game. And that will be it for these games that I'm reviewing this week. Make sure to comment down below some of your thoughts on these games, if you've played them, if you haven't, just your general thoughts on these games. Either way, if you did enjoy this video, make sure to like and subscribe to see more weekly content from me, Shane, at the board meeting in the future. Hope you all have an amazing day. Take care, everyone.